The universal stages of grief. I am Vanessa Blackwell, also known as the grief strategist. Grief is a complicated and powerful emotion. Unfortunately, it's very likely that at some point in your life you'll go through it. Everyone goes through a state of grieving at some point in their life. There are different theories about how we process our grief, and the theories don't differentiate significantly. In many cases, the stages of grief are exactly the same for each person. Some people go from one stage to another quickly, or you may skip a stage, and then this depends on your circumstance. Others may get stuck on a single stage of grief and have difficulty moving on. Knowing the universal stages of grief and knowing what to expect can really help you deal with your emotions once you're faced with your own personal loss and grief. It helps to know what's going on. It doesn't matter if what you experience is slightly different from the theory. It's going to give you a sense that you're not alone in your pain. Others have gone through this and survived, and so will you. Knowing the stages of grief also helps when you're trying to help another person you care for deal with his or her grief. Each stage of grief has meaning, and when you go through them, your goal is to process each stage with all its issues and move on to the next, until you're able to accept your loss and move on with your life. Next, we'll be sharing the 5 stages that everyone who encounters a loss of some kind faces. These are just guidelines. There are no strict rules to grief, but I hope this helps you to move on through the pain of your loss. I also hope that what you learn and what you experience will make you stronger. One day, you'll need that knowledge and strength to help someone else who's dealing with grief. Let's talk about the first stage of grief. Shock and denial. This is the first reaction that most people when hearing the news of a devastating loss. They're going to disbelief, and denial may follow. If someone brings the news to you that someone very close to you has passed, it's very likely that you're going to react with this, "Oh, no," kind of feeling. Your mind is simply not able to process the loss, and it's protecting you by completely denying the reality. You might decide to believe that someone is joking in some cases, or you might even laugh when you hear the news, the way a child laughs, to dispel the fear. Numbness may follow. It's nature's way of letting you deal with your emotions that you're capable of handling. Denial is really a very helpful stage of grief, but at some point you'll be able to face the reality. Reality means a range of very painful emotions that are going to follow. There's no rule to how long you should be in denial. There's no rule that everyone has to go through the denial stage. You might be able to jump straight into highly emotional stages such as anger or guilt. But if you persist in denying the reality of your loss, you do need help. That help can come from a close friend or a relative who knows you. Sometimes the help of a trained therapist or a grief coach may be necessary. You need to accept that the loss is part of life, and the pain that comes with the loss will slowly pass. The love you feel will remain and will always have the memories. You need to let yourself continue to grieve in order to reach the acceptance phase, which is the final stage of all. Only then can life truly go on. The next stage is pain and guilt. Once you get out of the denial phase, the pain is going to hit you full blast. It might be overwhelming at times. It might be very tempting during this stage to try to dull the pain with drugs or alcohol. But the pain can be healing too. like the pain of earth. It results in a new reality. Your life has changed. So you must face the feeling of guilt. It's very common during this stage. It may come from unresolved issues. It can be the guilt of surviving a loved one, especially if the loss you experienced is someone younger, or you all were together when the loved one passed, say a car accident, and you lived and the other one passed. You may feel guilty of some kind. The next stage is anger and bargaining. Your overwhelming pain takes many forms, and it's very common that people feel a powerful feeling of anger. This anger could be directed towards the doctors who couldn't do anything else, or against relatives who didn't have the time to give as much as you did, or they weren't there for the loved one as often as you made yourself available. Maybe even against God. You may have questions like, why me? How could this happen to such a nice person? Anger is healthy. After the destructive feeling of grief in the previous stage of grieving, pain leaves you without an anchor. You feel totally out of control in your life, and anger puts you back in control. We're trained to control anger at a very early age. Anger gives us a practical outlet to our devastating pain. It's important not to vent your anger to those closest to you. They're also grieving the majority of the time. You need them. You need each other. You don't want to lose them in the process. You've lost enough already. But stages of grief do not follow each other in the same order for all people. Anger can easily combine with guilt and turn on you. Even when you lash out to others, deep down you might feel that you failed your loved one in some way. If someone you love is terminally ill, you might try bargaining. You might try to bargain with God or destiny. You might promise to be a better person, or to stop smoking, or to move more generous if onlys. Bargaining is particularly powerful in this stage for people who have been diagnosed with a terminal illness. Bargaining for your life can offer hope or a channel for pain that gives more control. As with other stages of grief, anger and bargaining can last a short time. They can last weeks, they can last months, or you might skip them altogether. It's important to look for signs of uncontrolled anger, which can irreparably damage your relationship with those closest and dearest to you. The next stage is depression and loneliness. All the powerful emotions that follow denial are exhausting, but they represent hope. Strong emotions are the way your pain slowly shows its ugly face. But at some point, the hope fades, and you face the reality, and the reality is devastating. The loved one is really gone, and there's no way to change that. Life will never be the same. You are left alone. I know that's upsetting to hear. You might feel that life life doesn't make sense to you anymore, and depression sets in. Feeling depressed is a normal reaction to a devastating loss. In a way, if you don't get depressed, you're not really facing your loss. Those around you might have a difficult time seeing you so low. You may hear the term, snap out of it, move on. You'll hear it a lot. You may be even offered antidepressants or phone numbers of therapists, coach, your pastor, your religious counselor, or even counseling. These things may be helpful. Your friends may offer numerous casseroles. People may try to help where they can, and everyone that wants to help you get out of the blue and snap back to your old self. At some point, you're going to start noticing that life does go on, and the depression will slowly start to lift. The pain will remain, but with less intensity and with less hopelessness. Sometimes the depression comes in to deepen. You might refuse to find hopelessness. Thoughts of suicide may be intruding. That's the time when help is necessary. People who suffer from deep clinical depression can't shake it are not able to look for help. The help has to come to them. Family members, friends that need to be looked out for the depression that keeps getting worse instead of getting better, they need professional help. Help them look for professional help. There's no rule how long you should allow depression to wash over you. Days, weeks, it depends on your personality. The enormity of your loss and the support you have from those that love you, alone or together. You need to rejoin the life with all its pain and memories, and don't forget it will get better in time. Finally, 5 is acceptance. It's the 5th stage. This is the goal. This is the end game here. Accepting your loss does not come in a moment of epiphany. It doesn't work like that. It's a slow and painful process. It is the result of all the stages of your grief. It's the new form your pain takes. The form that will be part of your new life. Accepting your loss doesn't mean that you're through with it. It just means that you accepted death as a part of your life and you accept that you're starting with a new life. One enriched by the person who was part of your previous life. The life that you will build on the ashes of the previous one. The life that will celebrate the loved one you lost and now mourn. There will be times, months, and even years after your loss when you will revert to one of the stages for a moment or two. Or maybe even a little bit longer. There will be painful reminders which drag you back into the depths of your despair. But they will be rare, and you will be strong enough to deal with them at that point. Holidays may be painful for you because they're going to remind you of when you celebrated them with the person you lost. But the stages of grief will prepare you for this and will allow you to help to deal with the loss in your own way. This is really only the beginning of understanding your loss and your grief. For the real step-by-step process to overcome your grief, to move on to a more positive mindset, one where you can enjoy life and live again and be happy, smile and laugh again. I would highly recommend that you visit www.slayyourgrief.com, where I not only outline how to navigate these stages of grief in an expedited way, but I also show you ways to move into a better life where you can feel good and look forward to the days ahead. Check out www.slayyourgrief.com right now.